What's up, guys, and welcome to the Isn't It Crazy podcast. I'm your host, Rudy Perez. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or anywhere else you get this podcast from, just know I do have a video version of the show on YouTube. Just go on there and search up the Isn't It Crazy podcast. And while you're there, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. All right, so this is the first episode of 2021, and I could not be more excited to be here with you guys. I got a lot of big plans for the podcast this year. New website, new set, new intro, merchandise. And just like last year, I had a goal to deliver 52 podcasts, which is roughly one podcast per week. Now, I came about 4 weeks short of that goal, and 1 week was because it was my birthday. 2 weeks I was dealing with coronavirus, and the last week I just took off for the holidays. I wanted to spend it with my family and just relax and not have to deal with making an episode. But I'm happy to be back. I'm excited to be back to my normal routine, making videos for you guys. And for the first video, I want to talk about 2021 and how we can make it a better year for everybody. Now, in order to do that, we have to look back at 2020 and see all the problems that we encountered and how we overcame them and what lessons we learned that we can take into 2021 and implement them so we could have a better year. Just last year, I read a book by Matthew McConaughey called Greenlight. And great book. I highly recommend it if you guys are looking for a new book to start reading this year. And the way Matthew describes life is that it's a journey down this road. And the journey starts when you are born and it ends when you die. And throughout this journey, you're going to encounter green lights and red lights. Now, green lights are seen as good, positive. Everybody likes a green light. And red lights are seen as obstacles that you have to overcome. Now, the way you cultivate green lights is by having discipline, core values, and chasing your dreams and goals to their fullest extent. Now, I like thinking about it this way because it makes it a simplistic way of thinking about life. And if you talk in these terms, then 2020 was the biggest red light humanity has ever encountered. And with so many problems within 1 year, it's kind of overwhelming and hard to cover them all. So I'm just going to focus on some of the biggest problems we encountered and what we learned from them and how we can implement them this year, upcoming year. And one of the biggest problems we encountered was George Floyd's death and how it sparked race riots all around the country and all around the world. Now, what we learned from this was that there's conversations that we have to have, whether it's how to deal with police brutality, how to help police become better trained, and how to just have a different view when it comes to minorities. When it comes to police brutality, the new administration has to pass laws that have serious consequences when a cop oversteps their authority. Maybe this will deter them from using lethal actions. And we have to have conversations about how to help cops become better trained and add funds to cops so they can take these classes where they learn how to de-escalate a situation and use non-lethal methods to subdue the subject, and better training so they know when they're overstepping their boundaries so we can help save minorities' lives. And obviously, one of the biggest red lights we encountered this year was the coronavirus. There's a lot of lessons that we need to learn from this. One of those lessons has to be that administrations have to act faster than they did when it comes to pandemics. The government knows everything that's going on. They monitor everything going on around the world. What's the point of having NSA if all they're good for is to monitor our phone calls and look at us through our webcams? They knew that there was a coronavirus coming out of Wuhan, and the Trump administration did nothing to contain this problem. They downplayed it. They said that the coronavirus was going to be gone in 2 weeks, not to wear your masks. And the consequences of this time loss is that people lost their lives that might have not died if there was an administration that took charge and had a plan in place at the beginning of the coronavirus. So what we have to do in upcoming years is invest in our medical infrastructure. That means better tests, faster tests that are readily available to the public, and more help to the hospitals so they can contain the overflow of patients coming in during a pandemic, and have quarantine protocols that are financially stable. That means giving us stimulus checks every month that help people get through the hardships of being under quarantines. this quarantine's led to people losing their small businesses, their houses, and their jobs. So there needs to be a better plan when it comes to how we're going to keep everybody in lockdown, but also make sure that they're financially stable throughout these lockdowns so our economy doesn't get sh- trampled like it did this year. It's going to take a lot of work to make our economy what it was before COVID hit. And the last thing would be having people all be like-minded. Everybody wear your mask, everybody social distance. Don't make it a political issue because there's people saying that it's against their constitutional rights to be mandated to be wearing a mask. It caused all these infighting that distracted us from the bigger problem, which was how to solve this pandemic and how to move forward and bring everybody back to normal and make sure that once we're back to normal, help the economy flourish and give people the opportunity to get back what they lost. So hopefully we learn from this. Hopefully the new administration can act faster than the old administration did, and we'll see where it goes from there. And given that we had so many problems this year, one of the biggest problems was the election year and how the election polarized the American people into two sides, whether Republican or Democrat. And what happens when you have this infighting, like I said, is that you are distracted from the main problems that we have in this country. It slows down the process of democracy and nothing gets done. If we are so polarized, Senate and the House and the executive office, they all are going to appeal to their constituents. And what happens is that there's a gridlock and Republicans aren't going to give an inch and Democrats aren't going to give an inch and nothing gets done. No legislation gets passed. And the only people that suffer from this is the American people. In a nation united, we move faster to a betterment of our country and we get more shit done. In the words of Barack Obama in The Promised Land, a great book that I'm reading right now. And he says, there's no Black America, there's no white America, there's no Asian America, no Latin America. It's the United States of America. And those words seem to ring true to me because we're not going to move forward if we're all infighting. Russia and China, they're all looking at us and saying this is good for us because while they're fighting and have their own quarrels, we can advance our foreign agendas and become better than the United States. So we have to find a way that we can all agree on things so we can move forward. And a way we can do that is by accepting the administration that we have now. There's no point of rooting for Donald Trump after he lost. And there's hope in 2021 that that's not going to happen and legislation is going to get passed because the House, the Senate, and the executive office are all Democratic, which means that things are going to run a little bit smoother. Legislation is going to get passed, and you have an administration that is thinking with fact instead of emotion, which the Trump administration did a lot of, mostly Trump. But instead of listening to the facts and the experts, he was going by emotion and how he felt. And clearly, look at where we stand today. Economy shit. And that was due to the coronavirus, but that was also due to their inability to act fast and contain the problem. So hopefully 2021 to me seems like a year of hope because we have a vaccine that promises to get everybody back to normal and get the economy back going, to give people the opportunity to open up their businesses again and people get their jobs back. We have an administration that is going to progressively move the needle to a better year. And I think they have a lot of forward thinking and smart people in the administration, but we'll have to see. I'm not a fan of 2021 just yet. I'm seeing January 1st to February 1st as that 30-day free trial period before I start saying that this is going to be a good year. February 1st, we'll come back and we'll check the temperature on how great this year really is going to be. And hopefully it's better than 2020. What's next? Aliens? Who fucking knows? But just moving on to a different subject, I thought I'd end this episode by giving you guys my picks for the NFL first round playoffs. I love the NFL. And when the NFL started, I said I have three teams: my hometown, the Bears, the underdogs, the Cowboys, and whatever team Tom Brady was going to play on. Given that Tom Brady's playing the NFC East, we'll just start there. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing the Washington football team. They don't even have a name. But this matchup is about stories. And on one side, you got Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and how everybody criticized how old Tom Brady was and how he was about to fall off a cliff, and how most of his success came from being coached by Bill Belichick. Now, in the offseason, Tom Brady goes to the Buccaneers, and it was a smart move for him because he looked around and said, which team gives me the best option to go back to the Super Bowl? And that was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with their offensive powerhouse. They had great receivers, and then you get the additions of Antonio Brown, Gronkowski, and Scotty Miller. So Tom Brady's out to prove that most of the success they had in the New England Patriots was because of him and not because of Bill Belichick. And right now, it's looking pretty good for Tom Brady. He's in the playoffs and Bill Belichick's out of the playoffs. And on the other side, in the Washington football team, come on. Hollywood couldn't even script this better. You have a quarterback that suffered a gruesome injury 2 years ago, and where they told him he was never going to walk again. He was never going to play football again. And yet he's here playing in the NFL playoffs with a coach who suffered from cancer and is back. And, it's hard to root against these guys, because if they were to win against the Tampa Bay, win against the Green Bay Packers, and somehow win the NFC Championship and make it to the Super Bowl, Hollywood would be dying to make that movie. And it's a great story to tell, so much motivation, so much to overcome. But, I don't see it going that far. I don't even see them going past the first round, because the Washington football team came from a division that had three of the shittiest teams in the NFL. You had the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the New York Giants. All couldn't get past 8 wins. And when most of your schedule is playing these teams, when you face a really good team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, most likely you're going to lose. And I don't see them overcoming any of Tom Brady's ability to connect with his wide receivers. And right now, Tom Brady's gelling. They got hot at the right time, and I just see them going straight through the Washington football team. And it's still going to be a great story for Alex Smith, because they could make a movie about how he came back and became the comeback year player of the NFL, stuff like that. It's still going to be a great movie, but I don't see them having that Super Bowl ending that Hollywood would want. So I'm picking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Washington football team. In the next matchup, you got pretty much a toss-up between the LA Rams and the Seahawks. Now, the LA Rams have a great defense with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, and a decent quarterback with Jared Goff, and a great Super Bowl coach with McVay. And I think both teams in this situation got hot at the wrong time. They got hot in the middle of the season and then kind of plateaued. They couldn't find that magic and struggled at the end of the season, which brings me to the Seattle Seahawks. You got Metcalf and Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll, a great offense with another Super Bowl coach. But what it's going to come down to is what quarterback could be more efficient and what defense can make more stops. And I see Russell Wilson, being that he's more of a veteran in these playoff games, coming above Jared Goff and making more efficient passes and more scoring plays. And, just Jared Goff has always been so inconsistent that you could see him giving the ball away or making dumb mistakes, and it's just not going to be enough to get a win over the Seahawks. So I'm picking the Seahawks over the LA Rams. And in the last matchup, which features my hometown Bears versus the New Orleans Saints. I always saw the Bears as that one guy who crashed the party and they immediately saw that he didn't belong there. So they kicked him the fuck out. You know, do the Bears deserve to be in the playoffs? Probably not. They had a lot of breaks in the offseason, the Cardinals losing, and they kind of just crashed the party. Let's just see what happens. I think the Bears need to draft a 6'7" quarterback like Carson Wentz that could take hits and can play in the cold. And Chicago has notoriously been bad at picking quarterbacks. These finesse quarterbacks that tend to be busts. And every GM is so convinced we got the next guy, and it never works out. We're always second to the Green Bay Packers, and I don't see them in this matchup going up against Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, this offensive powerhouse. You saw what happened last week against the Green Bay Packers, who have a great defense or have a great offense. They just got scored on so easily that I don't see them keeping up with the pace that the Saints are going to bring. And they're notoriously bad in the red zone. I have no trust when it comes to Mitchell Trubisky making a touchdown when he's first and goal. He just can't do it for some reason, So I think the New Orleans Saints are just going to kick my home team out pretty easily. Drew Brees is on a mission to make sure they get back into the championship game, and it's going to be pretty rough for the Bears. So in the NFC conference, I got Tampa Bay over the Washington football team. I got the Seahawks over LA. And I got the Saints, obviously, over the Bears. On the other side, on the AFC side, you got the Bills versus the Colts. Now, the Bills are the number one team in all of the wild card. Josh Allen can sling that ball like a motherfucker. He literally throws that ball so hard. It's kind of impressive, for a rookie to be doing what he's doing. And he's a special talent in the league. And he's got great targets like Stephon Diggs. You compare the quarterbacks, you got this red hot Josh Allen making all the right throws, and the Bills playing and the defense making all the right stops. And then you look at the Colts and you have a decent defense, not the worst, but you also have an old Phillip Rivers who is largely inconsistent, and that's why they shipped him out of San Diego, the LA Chargers now. I see Phillip Rivers struggling to be good. And I see the Bills team just trouncing on the Colts. And, the Colts next year need to draft a better quarterback and cultivate and fix their holes. I think they're that team that's like at the bubble, they're couple draft picks away from becoming this elite team. But this year is not the year for them. So I'm picking the Bills over the Colts. And in the next matchup, you got one of my favorite teams. I wouldn't consider them. I wouldn't consider my fan of the Browns, but I like Baker Mayfield's swag. I like that they have such a stacked team. And just a couple years ago, they were the fucking laughing stock of the NFL. And look at them now. They're in the playoffs. And they're up against their rivals, the Steelers. And we all know what happened to Rudolph. And when he got hit with that fucking helmet and all the controversy that caused. But, I think the Steelers have been such an overrated team throughout the whole season. Most of the games were won with 1-point possessions, and a lot of them could have gone the other team's way. Luckily for the Steelers, it went their way, and they were like 12-0 to start the season, and everybody overhyped them. And there was a lot of problems that people were overlooking because when you're winning, it solves everything. So if the Browns stick to a game plan where they run their two great running backs, you got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and they can move the chains and have Mayfield throw a couple of passes, not a lot, they could win this game. They won last week, and a lot of people are making it out to that the Steelers are going to win because they're putting in 6 of their starters that were sitting in the last game that they had against the Browns. And now they're saying, oh, now that the starters are going to start, now we're going to fucking murder these guys because they barely beat us the first time. Well, there's no sure thing in the NFL, and there's no sure thing that the Browns can't do it again. So, they're coming in with the confidence that they already won their last game. So we'll see what happens. I'm telling you, if Baker Mayfield wakes up feeling dangerous and he can implement the game plan that best suits him, which is run the ball and occasionally throw it with the firepower that they have in the offense, they can pull this off. So I'm going to take a wild pick, and it's the wildest pick of all my picks in the first round. I'm going to go with the Browns over the Steelers. I think Big Ben, as good as he is, sometimes he crumbles under the pressure, and we don't know if he's good or not. He took that week off for a reason, and I'm just gonna put all my faith into the Browns and see what happens. And in the last matchup of the first round, you have the Baltimore Ravens versus the Tennessee Titans, and this one is interesting because both teams rely on the running game a lot, but one more than the other. You have the Baltimore Ravens, who seem like they're so Lamar Jackson dependent. They need him to run the ball to create all these openings downfield. And Lamar is not the most accurate quarterback. When he's doing these read options and he's running the ball to get the first down, he tends to be inconsistent. And if the Tennessee Titans defense, which is coached by a very good coach in Mark Brable, if they can contain Lamar Jackson and force him to pass, they could win this game. And they have the offense ability to do that with Derrick Henry. This guy's a beast. He's rushing for so many yards and he's scoring so many touchdowns, and he seems vertically unstoppable. We haven't seen a running back like this since Lynch came into the league. So if they can get something started with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, who proved to be a pretty good quarterback that everybody gave up on because he was out in Miami with Gates, who clearly was the problem, given that if you look at the Jets this season, Sam Darnold became worse because he had Gates as a coach. Ryan Tannehill is a viable option in the NFL, and he can make a lot of good plays. And right now he doesn't have to because he has Derrick Henry that he can rely on. So I think the Tennessee Titans beat the Baltimore Ravens just because they're so Lamar Jackson dependent. So those are my choices for the first round in the NFL. So I got the Tennessee Titans versus the Baltimore Ravens. I got the Browns over the Steelers. I got the Bills over the Colts. I have the Saints over the Bears, the Seahawks over the Rams, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Washington football team. And next week, I will tell you who I got on the second round, and so on until we get the championship game. But I'm ending this podcast. I'm probably over the time limit on the camera. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for supporting. And hopefully you guys have a great year. Happy New Year's to everybody. And we'll see how it goes. So I'll catch you guys in the next episode.